In the frozen silence of the Arctic, where the sun lingers low on the horizon and the land itself seems to breathe frost, a quiet tragedy is unfolding, one so haunting that it forces us to confront the limits of nature's resilience. Polar bears, long considered the kings of ice and snow, are being driven into choices that shock even the scientists who have studied them for decades. To watch them now is to witness desperation. To understand them now is to accept a truth both disturbing and unavoidable. For millennia, polar bears lived in a perfect balance with their world. Their survival was written in the rhythm of the ice. In winter, vast sheets stretched endlessly across the Arctic Ocean, creating hunting platforms for bears to stalk their prey, seals that surfaced through breathing holes in the ice. In spring, mothers emerged from snowy dens with cubs, teaching them the patient art of hunting, the brutal beauty of survival. For thousands of years this cycle continued unbroken, eternal. But in the last few decades everything has changed. The cycle is collapsing. The ice is disappearing. Winters are shorter, summers are longer. The great white hunting grounds are fragmenting into scattered floes that melt earlier each year. A polar bear built to rule a frozen kingdom now finds itself marooned on land, cut off from its food, forced into places where it was never meant to survive. And what they are doing now, what cameras, researchers, and even hunters are reporting, is not just survival. It's desperation made flesh. Scientists have documented bears raiding human settlements, pawing through garbage dumps and discarded food scraps. In some Arctic villages, residents wake to find polar bears wandering streets, driven not by curiosity, but by hunger so deep their ribs show through their white fur. What was once rare, even unthinkable, is now routine. Bears break into cabins. They attack sled dogs. They forage through waste, their regal image reduced to scavengers among plastic bags and aluminum cans. But this is only the beginning of what disturbs researchers most. In recent years, eyewitness accounts have surfaced of something darker: cannibalism. Large male bears attacking cubs not their own, desperate females turning on weakened members of their own kind. Scientists, initially hesitant to believe it, have since confirmed it with photographs and first-hand observation. What was once a rumor whispered among hunters has become a documented reality. Cannibalism is not normal behavior for polar bears. It is not part of their natural life cycle. It is the act of starvation, a predator pushed so far beyond its limits that its instincts turn inward. Imagine it. A creature evolved to stalk seals across the ice, forced by hunger to attack its own kin. The very sight chills not just because of what it means for polar bears, but because of what it says about the state of the Arctic itself. This isn't happening in isolation. The Arctic is warming at nearly 4 times the global average. Ice that once held firm until spring now breaks apart in midwinter. Storms are growing more violent, tearing apart floes that used to last the season. Mother bears who built dens on stable sheets of ice now find themselves stranded as those sheets crack and drift into open water. Cubs drown when forced to swim impossible distances. Scientists have tracked bears swimming over 60 miles without rest, their powerful bodies driven past exhaustion simply to find a stable platform. Some make it, many do not. And while their struggle plays out in silence, the implications roar across the planet. The Arctic acts like Earth's air conditioner, reflecting sunlight and regulating temperatures. As the ice disappears, heat builds, seas rise, and weather patterns warp across continents. Hurricanes grow stronger, floods intensify, droughts stretch longer. The polar bear's desperation is not just their tragedy, it's a signal flare for the entire world. When the kings of the Arctic are driven to cannibalism, it's not just about them, it's about us. Indigenous communities have noticed the changes for generations. Inuits have spoken of thinner bears, hungrier bears, bears behaving in ways their elders had never seen. Hunters tell stories of bears wandering inland, far from traditional ranges. Some elders whisper that the balance has been broken, that the spirits of the ice are warning humanity through the bear's suffering. Western science may frame it in data and graphs, but the warning is the same: something unnatural is happening. But here's the disturbing twist that lingers beneath all of this. For years, reports of polar bear cannibalism were downplayed. Some officials worried that the public would see the images as too sensational, too emotional. Others feared it would spark outrage that governments weren't ready to confront. There were whispers that some of the most shocking photographs of emaciated bears, of desperate killings, were quietly archived rather than released. Not because they weren't true, but because they were too true, too raw, too damning. And so, the story of the polar bear becomes not just one of survival, but of suppression. It's a struggle playing out on ice sheets while much of the world looks away. A warning delivered in silence while headlines focus elsewhere. But silence cannot erase reality. The images still surface. The eyewitness accounts still come, and they force us to reckon with a question that unsettles everyone who dares to ask it: how long can they endure? Some scientists estimate that if trends continue, entire polar bear populations could collapse within decades. By the end of this century, the Arctic may face ice-free summers, leaving bears stranded for months with no access to seals at all. The thought is almost unthinkable. A world without polar bears, the great predators of the North, gone forever, not because they failed to adapt, but because the world they adapted to disappeared beneath their feet. Yet for all the despair, the bears still fight. They swim longer. They adapt their diets, eating eggs, birds, fish, anything to cling to life. They wander into human settlements not just out of instinct, but out of the will to survive. There is resilience in their suffering, a stubborn refusal to vanish quietly. But resilience has limits. And watching them, we are reminded of something hauntingly human. When pushed to the edge, survival demands choices that disturb, choices that strip away dignity but preserve existence. The polar bear's story is not just a warning about climate change, it is a mirror. It shows us how fragile even the mightiest creatures become when their foundation collapses. And it forces us to ask, if this is what happens to apex predators at the top of the food chain, what will happen to us when the systems we depend on, our food chains, our water, our climate, begin to unravel? This is why the images of starving polar bears, of cannibalism, of scavenging, haunt us so deeply. They don't just show a bear in crisis, they show us a possible future, stripped bare of comfort, ruled only by survival. The Arctic isn't just melting ice, it's a countdown, and the bears are the first to pay the price. So the next time you see a polar bear framed in a glossy calendar or an ad campaign, remember, behind those iconic images lies a reality too disturbing to ignore. A reality where the kings of the Arctic are being driven to unthinkable acts, not by choice, but by hunger. And every day the ice shrinks, the choices grow darker. The silence of the Arctic is not empty. It's screaming a warning we can't afford to ignore. If this story stirred you, if you believe the world needs to see what's happening beyond the headlines, then don't let this warning go unheard. Share it. Talk about it. And subscribe, because these aren't just stories about animals, they are messages from the edge of the world, messages that could decide our own survival. The bears are fighting to endure, but the question is, are we?